members of the community. I'm John Listishin, the town manager, for those who are joining us either through Zoom tonight or being streamed live on Facebook. Tonight is the State of the Town presentation. We have a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to have things a little bit differently this evening. Instead of me being the only presenter, members of the leadership team will be presenting later on about challenges and changes and accomplishments over the course of the last 15 months. So I'm honored to be here this evening, along with the staff leadership team. Can you roll the next slide? And who's creating this or controlling it? I'm sorry. Is it Ryan or Jessica? Okay.
I am. Yes.
All right. So I'll give you a little sign or something when I need it forwarded. As we begin this this evening, I think it's appropriate that we just pause for a moment to recognize the lives lost and the lives forever changed in the last year. And yes, by COVID, but also by food insecurity and by the death of George Floyd. Brian, if you can move to the next slide. And by flooding and by the increase in violent crime that we've seen recently. All these things have changed us and I think have forever changed us as we come together as a community, as a town organization, and the proposals that the staff team puts together and presents to the mayor and council, and in the council's deliberations on how to move forward and navigate the community. These things have changed all of us. And in changing us, though, there are certain things that stay the same, and these are our foundation. It's what we're built upon. And I'm going to discuss each one of these in a little bit of detail, but you've heard me talk about the town as a structure, as a building. And I talk about building blocks and foundations and specialty trades, if you will, depending on the program. And our foundation is strong, and it is built upon our diversity and inclusion, the vision and commitment statements that the mayor and council have passed, E to the fifth, which is the staff-driven program that guides our decisions, our resident participation, the mayor and council actions, and indeed our entire staff team, all the town employees, in fact, make up the foundation upon which everything we do is based. So if we talk about diversity and inclusion for a minute, and the mayor and council adopted, it's a lengthy statement, but it's a good statement. And it really does define who we are. We are a diverse community. From the northwest corner, our newest development, to the southeast corner, where we have a concentration of multifamily homes, and to everything in between. We are very much a diverse community, and the diversity of the staff team continues to grow. And I'm really proud of the steps that we've taken to diversify the staff team generally. And then when I look at the leadership team and the diversity that we have on the expanded leadership team, not just the department heads, but we have Rosa Gwixon, who has joined us on the leadership team, and Gentry Jones has joined us on the leadership team. We have a diverse group of leaders that on the staff side that reflect the community. And that's really important. So when we talk about diversity, and then we talk about inclusion, because inclusion, if you can go on to the next slide, because inclusion is a strategy to leverage the diversity. And we have to be deliberate in this. And I believe that we are, and that we take steps to bring people together and to have many voices. And I actually see increased participation in some of our meetings now because we're remote. And I think the more we can expand our community conversations, the more that we can get the residents and business owners involved, the better and the stronger the town will become. So in addition to diversity and inclusion, we have a serious commitment to racial justice and equity. Now, the mayor and council passed a resolution in June of 2020. And this was shortly after Mr. Floyd was killed. And the resolution calls for, in part, a commitment to policies and programs and initiatives that aim to undo the effects of systemic racism and to unequivocally support and defend Black people. That's a tall charge for us. And we as a town have taken that seriously, and we've taken some actions, and there's many more to take. But in following up on this, shortly after this resolution, Chief Morris and Assistant Chief Wixon issued a very strong statement condemning the killing of Mr. Floyd. And then following up on that, we had a special meeting in June of 2020 to review the police department use of force policy. And it was revised. And then in little ways, the staff team is also supporting this because we're having internal conversations. When things happen, I discuss things openly. So if there's an event where there was injustice and it's in the news, that's something that I'll bring up in our all staff meetings. We also believe that words matter. And it may seem like a little thing, but we examined our own choice of words and discovered that we use some words that we shouldn't be using in our common practice. And we've made changes. And one just example, there's a listing of addresses that the state puts out. And it's commonly referred to, I believe, probably across the state, as the property master. We don't need to call it that. Words have power and words can sting. And so we've made changes internally. Whether it's the property master, or we had a thing called the master calendar. Now it's the shared primary calendar. And we called upon our vendors to make changes too. And they have, and they carried through. I was actually quite pleased and surprised that the vendor that provides our email security, Barracuda, they took my call. A town manager from a small town reaching out to an international corporation, and I received a call back on the issue within 2 days. And they said, you're right, and we're already working on this. Because when you want an email to go through, it shouldn't be that it's whitelisted. It should be that it's an approved email from an approved sender. And so we've made these little changes. And it's my hope that these little changes are speaking into being the direction of the mayor and council and the values of this community. So we also have the vision and commitment statements. And these are statements that the mayor and council have passed over the course of the last 4 years. And these two serve as foundation to us. And they provide clear direction to the council, because when we are putting together proposals, we look at these and we read them and we ask ourselves, are we going in the right direction? So these statements that the mayor and council have passed over the last 4 years, they serve as a barometer or as a compass. Use the analogy that is best for you, but it provides direction to us on an ongoing basis. And we find that to be helpful. I mentioned the E to the fifth, the excellence in service. These are it's a management tool that the leadership team developed over the course of about 18 months. And foundationally, we look to ethics first. And we are in March, and we're celebrating Ethics Awareness Month. And just as a little aside, we have all staff participating in ethics training this month. And I think that's pretty awesome too. But ethics is foundational. And then we have to make sure we understand expectations of the community and of the council, and the employees need to understand my expectations as well. And then we work towards efficiency, and then the effectiveness, and that's more on the money side of things. Are we being effective in the charge of being trusted with the public funds? And then the fifth is execution. Are we actually moving forward? Are we getting things done? Because we have to be action-oriented in what we do. So next in the foundation, and it's good for me to point out that none of these are in order. We're all these foundational components are needed in order to move us forward and to keep us standing straight. So the resident participation, we are really fortunate in Riverdale Park to have the resident participation that we have. And yes, you can always have more, but the Board of Code Appeals, the Ethics Commission, the Sustainability Committee, the Green Team, the Chiefs Community Advisory Council was just put out a PSA to help other community members in preparing themselves and to avoid being a victim of a crime. Our individual volunteers, and yes, even our public comments. When someone joins a Zoom meeting and sends a chat, that helps us. And the more we can encourage that, and we're really hopeful with the Community Conversations program that Ms. Barnes and I are working on, we will get even more community participation. And then we turn to the direction that the mayor and council give us. And in 2020, these are some pretty significant numbers here. 29 resolutions, 14 ordinances, 40 motions, and a charter amendment. In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of everything that's going on that's impacting the town of Riverdale Park, the council acted. And that's, from my experience, pretty impressive. So I now want to just talk for a minute about the leadership team. And so I mentioned that they're going to be presenting tonight. And I have to say that, and I don't want this to come across as hollow. I am blessed and privileged to work with professionals I do. The dedication, Ryan sending me an email 2 o'clock on Saturday morning. And it wasn't that he just woke up and thought of one thing, he was finishing something. The leadership team works day and night, and they do what needs done to keep the town moving forward. And matter of fact, we wouldn't be having this presentation without them helping me put this together. And so all the accomplishments that we have, it's not the John show. And I said that when I got here 4 years ago. This is nothing about me. This is about the town. And the leadership team that we've assembled believes that. they live that. And each one to their own measure is very much dedicated to this town. And we are fortunate for that. But that's expanded. And we have some photos here. And Ryan, just like every 20 seconds or so, go through the different photos. Here's the leadership team. Or the staff team, and look at things, how things have changed, right? I mean, the PPEs is an obvious thing, but handing out food, still working, regardless. Your 20 seconds is up. Look at these smiling faces. We are fortunate. We have a happy team. Behind the mask, there's smiles. And that's really important, because we have recruited folks and retained folks that care and enjoy their jobs. We included a photo here of the swearing in of 2 police officers on the mayor's lawn. Just something else that changed. And then more of our police reaching out to children, both for food and for an event there. So we have stayed engaged and involved with the community throughout the last year, despite the challenges that we have had, that we all have had. Next slide, Ryan. So a theme that I wanted to share with the community tonight is that the town has acted. And I think that's really important to stress. So whether it be COVID, and I have this little timeline here. So I issued the first town alert on March the 13th. 12 days later, the mayor and council took extensive legislative action. 12 days. If you look at every one of the items that I had listed on the earlier slide that are impacting us, the death of Mr. Floyd, food insecurity, the flooding, the recent increase in violent crime. In each one of those, the town, being true to its foundation, being true to its values, has acted. And I include this timeline to simply illustrate how quickly, but you can look at all the others, all those other things, and say, wow, the town acted here. And then the flooding, we acted with the flooding, whether it was extending the emergency repair grants, or actually going out and picking up discarded items that needed hauled away, being a listening ear to someone who was stressed because they had just lost so much, coordinating with the county to better understand why the flooding happened and how it can be prevented in the future. Short and long term, the town has acted. And that's the theme here. So when I think of words to describe the town and to describe the last year, we put this little word cloud together. I think that the resilience, the growth, the personal growth, the growth as a community, people working together at food distributions, and we think of masks, and but it's really about caring for each other. And that's something that we have seen strongly among our residents. So I talk about also, and this just ties together, in addition to acting, we have been community focused, outwardly focused. And that outward focus has been on legislative actions, on personal protective equipment giveaways. And we have to remember there was a census in all this too during this time. And giving away, I believe it was nearly 4,000 masks to our residents, labeled with TRP and Census 2020, wanting everyone to be counted. The financial donations that the council directed, not to mention the CARES Act funding, the budget amendments, the new and increased project funding, everything that has been done in the last year has been focused on the community. And for that, I think the town is not only stronger, I think that the town should be proud. So I wanted to finish my little intro before we go to the departments in talking about the Partners in Economic Recovery Program. And Ryan will get into detail here when he covers his two areas of responsibility. But this is what happened in those 12 days that I referenced a few minutes ago. The council amended the business growth grant, amended the business improvement grant, created the farmers market dollar program, created the resident restaurant carryout assistance program, created the emergency repair program, called on landlords to work cooperatively with residents and businesses, extended the Go Green initiative, waived certain permit fees, delayed payment of certain business fees, and created the small business assistance program. All this was done before CARES Act was thought of. And the town acted with no promise of anything in terms of, oh, you may get reimbursed for this. And that too reflects on our foundational values, who we are as a town. And for that, I too think that collectively, the staff team, the residents, the mayor and council, the business owners, we should all be proud of the fact that we are part of the town of Riverdale Park. So with that, I'd like to transition and have the staff team members, the leadership team members, talk about their respective areas of responsibility. So Ms. Barnes will be up first, and then the leadership team members will just cycle through with no direction from me. And Ryan, you'll have to take your slide cues from them. And as I mentioned, Ryan will be covering both development services and neighborhood services. At the end of that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about budget and finances in terms of where we are and some challenges ahead. And then myself and the leadership team will be available for any questions that the mayor and council or residents, whoever is viewing, may have. So with that, Ms. Barnes.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson, members of the town council, and community members. 2020 was certainly a year like no other for the administrative services team. Although there were certainly some challenges, we found that those challenges paved the way for significant growth in 2020. Some of the challenges that we faced were a compressed timeline for implementing process changes related to COVID-19. The changes had to be made in a matter of days. In-person services and events were limited or canceled due to the pandemic. The limitations related to social distancing requirements were additional matters that we needed to consider when implementing changes to internal and external operations. Unfortunately, many of the events that we had planned for and looked forward to had to be canceled in 2020, which was in the best interest of public health. The overall implementation of new technology, we had to find new ways of doing business. We needed something that was contactless, but also accessible for those with limited access to technology. Some of the changes that we made in 2020 were conversion of all front-facing town hall operations to virtual or contactless processes. We equipped our staff to work remotely. We transferred town hall phone lines to town-issued cell phones. We installed a mailbox at town hall. We never needed one of those before. We registered with the Secretary of State to become remote notaries. We automated and streamlined the permits and licensing application process, as well as accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll processes. After significant consideration and review of the options available to us, we chose Zoom for our internal and external meetings. We held all staff meetings, nearly 50 at this point, as well as public meetings via Zoom. We are very proud of all the things that we accomplished this year, including transforming town hall processes in a very short period of time with no interruption to services, establishing Zoom as the town's virtual meeting platform, successfully holding virtual meetings of the Mayor and Council, the Board of Code Appeals, and the Ethics Commission. Based on those experiences and what we have learned and continue to learn, we have designed protocols for all town Zoom meetings to ensure transparency, consistency, and accessibility. Implementation of the Farmers Market Dollars program and other partners in the economic recovery initiatives. Although the Farmers Market Dollar program is very labor intensive, it is extremely successful and has been very rewarding. The positive feedback from the community has been tremendous, and we look forward to continuing the program as long as we possibly can. The flexibility, innovation, teamwork, and creativity that was further developed in 2020 will make us better prepared for whatever we may encounter in 2021. We learned in 2020 that you can't plan for everything. You have to be flexible and willing to pivot, as John says frequently. And I think the administrative services team did a great job with that in 2020. It's my pleasure to hand off the virtual mic to my colleague, Paul Smith, Director of Employee Services, Finance and Employee Services.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council and residents of the great town of Riverdale Park. On the employee services side, we faced a lot of challenges this year. COVID-19 came with unusual circumstances. Employees found themselves in unique situations of having to work along with their children, homeschooling their kids, caring for elderly family members, and feeling the disconnect and social isolation. I'm glad to say that our team came out without missing a step. We're very proud of the team that we have. We faced some challenges, and we addressed some of those by providing PPEs to staff and creating family-friendly policies of providing flexible work arrangements and giving working parents the time and information and services and resources that they needed to continue to do their job and meet their family needs. We tried to make sure that we were addressing the mental health and well-being of our employees, providing resources to employees and reminding staff what mental health benefits we have included in our insurance plan. We're working now to establish a formal employee assistance plan, and we will continue to address mental health and counseling services and inform the staff of what's available. And another challenge was managing remote work, and COVID-19 has driven us to a swift transition for supervising people in the office to managing remote employees and encouraging staff to find a work-life balance. And so those are some of the challenges that we faced, and we would love to say that we have a lot of accomplishments also with the defined benefit program. Since Mr. Lustician has joined us, we now provide yearly statements to our employees. And this year we did a thorough cleanup on that, and we did a deep dive, and we've collected all the back years, and we provided that to the actuarial company. And we're glad to say that this year they'll probably have the most accurate statements that they've had since starting the defined benefit program. And we want to thank Mr. Lustician for putting the time in on that. We also minimized time on administrative tasks. Our HR system helped us cut down the administrative tasks significantly. Information now is available to our staff 24 hours a day without them having to actually talk to a person. We've give most of our services are online, and so that has helped a lot to keep employees informed, as well as them being able to manage their information. We've improved the recruitment process. Onboarding is now about 85 to 90% automatic. We All the forms that we used to send to people to fill out, they can now do online, as well as our recruiting is now automatic too and automated. And so when we look at the recruiting now, we just put it online and applications come in, and managers get the applications, they can review them, they can set up interviews. So the administrative side of this has really worked out great for us. We also implemented a remote work program quickly. We had an unofficial remote work program back in March of last year. Now we have a one that we put together, a detailed remote work program that's going to really help and assist our staff in getting their jobs done remotely. We assisted staff in navigating personnel dynamics that impacted work as their work. We've instituted flexible work schedules to help people meet the needs that they need for themselves and for their family. We also want to recognize that sick leave is lower due to mask and social distancing. And we would think that we would like to continue to do that at some point and keep our staff safe and keep them healthy. And I think at this time, I am going to pass this off to, if I'm correct, Ryan. No, Ivy, I'm sorry. I'm going to pass this off to Ivy Lewis, the Director of Public Works.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Ivy Lewis, Director of Public Projects and Services, Department of Public Works. A key challenge for the department has been maintaining acceptable levels of service throughout the town while also keeping employees safe during the pandemic. The department has had a number of employees' injuries over the last 12 to 18 months, unrelated to COVID, making it clear that we need to develop a more effective safety program, and just as importantly, a safety culture among staff to minimize injuries and accidents and any drop in productivity. We also need to allocate time, and I think I said this in budget meetings last year, to inventory, assess, and document the town's assets so that we have a clear and complete picture of existing conditions across the town's infrastructure that can inform our maintenance strategy and annual plan. And lastly, we need to make progress on overdue priority capital projects, including road resurfacing and repairs, the municipal center renovations, the Longfellow Stormwater Project, and trolley trail lighting, just to name a few. We've made some recent changes in how we operate, largely due to COVID, but also important as long-term practices. We've implemented a one-person, one-vehicle policy to keep employees safe during the pandemic. This also gives them flexibility to move on to different projects after a joint task is completed, not having to return to the shop multiple times a day to drop off a team member who has a different assignment in a different part of the community. Also, a change was making staff weekend work hours permanent. In order to accommodate an employee's family situation, we currently have an employee working on both Saturdays and Sunday. We intend to make it permanent, at least on Saturday, to respond to service calls that come in during the weekend. And at the same time, not having to incur employee overtime costs. We recently reinstituted written notification to residents on tree removal, specifically the scheduled date, scope of work, and parking impacts. And for the first time, we have a contract for snow removal services to supplement staff snow operations when needed. I'm certainly proud to say that the department did a great job preparing for and responding to recent back-to-back weather events. These were all hands-on deck operations and they were effective. We started preparations early and as a result did not have to call in the contractor for reinforcements. We've made measurable progress on the municipal center renovation project. We have new roofs, new HVAC units, and completed designs and specifications for all alterations and additions at all 3 municipal buildings, and recently submitted the building permit application and released an invitation to bid to get the project completed. We completed a new sidewalk, and in partnership with the Central Kenilworth Avenue Revitalization CDC, have planted 15 trees along the frontage of the Field of Dreams properties. And we finally have in place an MOU with the state of Maryland to reimburse the town for expenses related to mowing and maintaining East-West Highway within the town limits. Thank you very much. And I'd like to turn it over to Chief Morris.
Thank you, Ivy, and good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here this evening. I want to thank the town manager for his work on putting this together with the leadership team and for the opportunity to speak this evening. I also want to thank the residents of the town of Riverdale Park and our business owners for their patience in the last year, because there have been significant changes as has already been identified, and those changes are continuing. So we certainly want to extend our appreciation for the patience that they have exhibited as we've worked through all these issues. I also want to take just a second and thank the men and women of the police department for stepping to the plate. It's been said that adversity does not define character, it reveals it. And the men and women of the police department have not missed a beat during the course of this last year. Ryan, with you changing these, I'm going to share with you that back in the 1960s and 70s, when Paul and I were going to elementary and junior high school, we watched film strips in class, and they were narrated by a record. And when it was time to advance the film strip, you would hear a ding. So that'll be my clue for advancing the slides. The challenge is clearly operating through COVID and doing so without any interruption of services. And that's been our most important component of the last year, is making sure that our staff stays safe. Obviously, a risk to one posed a risk to all. So we took significant measures in order to protect our staff who had to report daily for their shifts, and to do so in such a way that reduced to the degree possible any risk of exposure to COVID. Significant process reengineering, I'll talk about this. Acquisition of supplies was extremely difficult, not just PPE, but routine supplies that we needed in order to operate became increasingly more difficult to acquire. And with the increasing difficult came increasing expense. Yet we were able to continue to do so, and worked with our counterparts in Prince George's County and surrounding jurisdictions to share supplies as necessary to make sure that all of the departments had what they needed in order to continue to operate. Recruiting and retention continues to be a challenge. My hat's off to Mr. Smith and to Assistant Chief Gwixons for all of their work in maintaining our recruiting and retention programs so that we could fully staff the police department. And as I sit here tonight, and I'm always tentative to say this, including the 3 students that we have in the police academy, we are just about fully staffed. Maintaining quality and training, quality of training and education programs was extremely difficult. As you might imagine, a lot of our training is interactive, yet we were able to do so in a way that was safe and effective. And of course, maintaining an aging fleet, and that goes along with the acquisition of supplies. The fleet vehicles are not as prevalent as going onto a car lot and making a purchase of a regular motor vehicle. So we continue to work to make sure that our fleet is safe and functional and operational, and working with Mr. Smith to make sure that that continues to occur, as well as the town manager. Ryan, here's your clue. Ding. Okay. And overcoming those challenges, some of what we put into place was we implemented all virtual requests for all police and accident reports. Fortunately, the police department was ahead of the game because we had automated our reporting system a number of years ago, but so it made it much easier to be able to transition to providing reports via email and doing things virtually. So everything from motor vehicle reports, accident reports, to crime reports, to property damage reports are all now accessible with a request. And the payment has been set up for those fees, or for the fee collection to be done with a credit card, with no additional fee for using the credit card to those that choose to do so. Likewise, the Citizens Advisory Council went virtual, and Mr. Lustician has mentioned the work that they did with Ms. Barnes in putting together the recent crime presentation. So our hats off to our CCAC for their continued work. We did have to suspend some police services temporarily. Our ride along program, which is a fairly popular program, remains suspended. We suspended station tours and police fingerprinting services for non-applicant processes. We also limited access to the police department, restricted it to RPPD personnel with the exception of Public Works, which again, kudos to our Public Works department. They've done a yeoman's job of keeping the police department clean and disinfected. We put into place sworn staffing and dispatcher staffing protocols to minimize contact during the change of shifts. And of course, during all change of shifts, everything was decontaminated. So both at the beginning and the end of shift. Likewise, we still had to make arrests on those occasions where it was warranted. So we took the necessary precautions to disinfect our vehicles both at the beginning and the end of every shift, as well as disinfecting after every prisoner transport. As far as the challenges, I'm sorry, ding. Ryan?
He advanced it, Dave.
I'm sorry. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay. I was looking at my slides. I apologize. As far as some of our other accomplishments, keeping the operating without disruption, keeping morale high, extremely challenging at any given time. But in this case, doing so by frankly making sure that we shared information regularly with our staff, as well as being quite candid in our approach. I've already mentioned the contactless reporting and including the parking permit renewal. And we've recently assigned a dedicated full-time cops officer. I do want to touch on some of the training that we have been able to provide for our staff during the course of the year. Ethics, as John has already mentioned, is continual and ongoing. It's not a one and done, but everyone is participating in it during this month. Training on duty to intervene, use of force, reinforced training on interpersonal communication skills, autism awareness, reinforcement of constitutional law and constitutional policing, as well as sexual assault, recertification of CPR, and hazardous material handling. And we're using the Legit's online campus to take advantage of additional training opportunities. So with that, I'll close by saying that at the onset of COVID, we were made aware of a significant narcotic problem in town. That information came to us by via residents that observed this activity, and we were able to obtain search warrants and arrest warrants and close down that operation. So again, our thanks to our community that took note of what was going on and made us aware of it and worked with us to bring that to a close. So with that, unless there's any questions, I'll pass this on to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. Yes, this year has been a learning process in many ways. The development services and neighborhood services offices have grown tremendously. When John and I were talking about these slides, he was asking about changes that have been made. And I had to tell him that I was having trouble thinking of changes because I had joined the town at the beginning of 2020. And so everything was a change. But I looked at that as a positive. I had the luxury of coming into this year with a fresh pair of eyes, so I wasn't afraid to change anything. And I was privileged to have some guidance from some great leadership teammates. Like the other departments I've mentioned, our offices also had to adapt to contactless systems for the safety of residents and people performing business in town, and for the staff as well. I don't believe Jessica mentioned, but I think it was the day before the town hall closed to the public. I actually worked with one of her staff members to set up a process for permits and licenses to be applied for online. And we set it up right as the day was ending, and it was thankfully a pretty smooth process. We haven't had to amend that process at all, and I think it's been very helpful for both our staff and also for the residents and businesses applying. We've also had to try to assist residents and businesses with problems that they haven't encountered before. We had residents who were much more aware of things and talking to the town much more than they may normally have because they were working from home or home because they were unemployed. And on the other hand, there was also residents who were not able to make the appropriate amendments to their property to fix them because they were unemployed as well. And so we had to really walk a balancing line, a tightrope, if you were, to try to both help the town and also not try to put any residents in a worse position. We have a lot of programs that are designed to assist businesses and even residents with I'd say chances to grow. So business programs help with things like facade improvements and other types of improvements like that to businesses. But the businesses were more not in a very good position to even think about those types of improvements in this economy. They were more concerned with just staying afloat, and so we had some problems that we hadn't really seen before, and they hadn't really considered, like not being able to dine in the restaurant. We had to, in order to try to overcome these obstacles, we coordinated with agencies and departments that we hadn't ever worked with before. For example, we worked with the Department of Social Services, Department of Housing Services, and another third-party agency with the county in order to assist with the housing instability that we were seeing in town. It was difficult working with a whole new group of people that we didn't have established relationships with. But it was definitely a learning process, and we were able to do so successfully. The last thing that was a notable challenge for us was just navigating stress relationships. A lot of those businesses that I mentioned before that were just struggling to stay afloat were very overwhelmed by everything that was happening in the pandemic. I would have to really be creative when trying to reach out to them about solutions that may help them, as they were being bombarded by information and stressed and overwhelmed by everything that's coming in, and just being patient with everybody, residents and businesses who were concerned and not sure exactly what to do with all the information and what their next steps should be, just navigating those relationships. Some of the accomplishments that we saw in development services and neighborhood services, John had mentioned a little earlier, the Partners in Economic Recovery program, which, as he mentioned, was put together on a very short timeline, but it has been very successful. I'd like to point out that the most successful program, the Farmers Market Dollars program, currently assists 241 households, and those households who house just over 1,000 individuals. And to date, the residents have been able to redeem over $168,000 at the Riverdale Park Farmers Market, and that $168,000 has helped feed residents in need, and that's great. And we've also had to establish a remote working process for neighborhood services and development services. The neighborhood services staff received guidelines and have been able to adapt to really reduce the number of in-person communications, and for the most cases, eliminating the need for in-person communications. And that's been very helpful, and keeping our staff safe and our residents safe. All right, and the town was notified last April that the CARES Act would provide additional funds for the town to assist with the changes we made in the response to the pandemic. The town submitted a spending plan in June, which outlined the spending plan to receive a full $441,000 that the town was allocated. And in November, on November 17th, the county's Department of Social Services advised us that we would need to amend our spending plan because of changes in their projections on the emergency rent relief program. The town was quick to adjust, and we had amended our spending plan to reduce the amount that we had expected to spend on the emergency rent assistance program, and we had also established the business assistance program. And on April 1st of last year, the town closed on the purchase of 5,000 and 5,002 Queensbury. This was made a little bit more difficult by the pandemic. One of the adjustments that had to be made was the signing of the actual documents had to be done outside. We had the resident seller come over and sign the paperwork along with our town attorney, Fred Sussman, in front of Town Hall. And so it's a good example of all the small changes that we had to make this year in order to keep everybody safe. And as John mentioned, the census was this year. It's hard. It's with so many things going on, the census seems like a long time ago. But the census went over pretty successfully. We had a lot of assistance from OAS and from neighborhood services distributing the masks to the multifamily buildings that John had mentioned earlier. And at the end of the self-response deadline, we had received 1% to 2% higher than in 2010 for our self-response rate, which I think is pretty incredible given the fact that we were in a pandemic during this and not able to have the types of events that we would like to have had and promoted in those type of ways. In January of 2020, the town passed the donation bin legislation requiring the donation bins to be registered in town. Neighborhood Services has been able to contact the bin owners, and now all operating donation bins in town are licensed. Neighborhood Services also established a virtual inspection program, which is used in their programs, such as the single family rental license program, where the homes that are being rented out and applying for the permit or license are able to use technology so that neighborhood services officers are not required to enter the building, and that residents are able to receive their inspection without having to subject themselves to people coming into their home, and our staff is able to remain safe. Yes, and so that's for the notable accomplishments I have here. I'd like to turn it over to the newest member of the leadership team, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, so FY20, this has been, 2020 has been an eventful year for all of us. There were a number of challenges that the Office of Finance Services faced, main one being how to navigate through COVID-19. The first major challenge surrounding COVID-19 was managing the budget entirely remotely. Budget process is a daunting task, even during a year without a pandemic. Normally, staff are able to collaborate in person, so it required a more precision, timing, and preparation as we proceeded to complete all of the major tasks through Zoom, email, text, and phone calls. Second major challenge that the Office of Finance Services faced was managing the audit entirely remotely. Normally, staff are able to work with the auditors hands-on in order to provide the necessary required documentation, answer any questions that they may have on site. But fortunately, before COVID-19, we had actually transitioned a good amount of the work that we did to an electronic format. So this benefited us tremendously as we proceeded through the audit process. It was, however, a transition, not having the ability to just pull, physical files like we were in previous audits. So it was certainly a challenge that the Office of Finance Services faced. The third major challenge surrounding COVID-19 was coordinating the day-to-day processes. The team is responsible for payroll, AP, accounts payable, accounts receivable, managing revenue, expenditures, and various other responsibilities. So initially, it was a difficult task in coming up with those processes to ensure that all the money was received in a timely fashion, checks were deposited, invoices were paid, and then payroll was handled. The AP process, as noted on this slide, in particular, was probably the most difficult challenge of these processes. It did require coordination between various staff members in the Office of Finance Services, admin services, and actually the Public Works Department. So, making sure that all the checks were printed, signed, mailed in a timely manner, while also maintaining social distancing, coordinating when one member may be in the office, and then maintaining, the necessary separation of duties that's required by the auditors, and just, from a finance standpoint, was certainly a challenge. Next slide would be the accomplishments. So, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the finance team had begun the process of moving to electronic processes. We had an AP voucher approval system, which one of our first processes that was moved from the archaic model to an electronic model. We recently implemented the electronic timesheets. This has increased the accuracy and the efficiency of the finance team, and it has made remote work easier. So it's certainly an accomplishment that we are proud of. For the second year in a row, the town was awarded the Distinguished Budget Award. This award is issued by the GFOA, and it's also an accomplishment that the finance team is very proud to have received. And I'd like to also note that it's not an accomplishment just of the Office of Finance Services, but one that should be shared with each of the departments. Each department has contributed heavily to the budget process, so it's something that each department should share some of that. So the third accomplishment was stepping up to the challenge and executing, putting out a balanced budget, and working through the audit process entirely remotely. Much of the remote work has been done for the Office of Finance Services, and we actually found that we were just as, if not more efficient in both the budget process, audit process, and many of the other various processes that the Office of Finance Services executes on a daily basis. So this is another accomplishment that we are certainly proud of. And that concludes the accomplishments of the Office of Finance Services. I'll hand it over to John.
Thanks, Gentry. And so I wanted to, we're getting near the end of the official presentation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our upcoming budget and just the challenges that we have. We've mentioned the uncertainty. That should be a familiar theme at this point. We've been talking about that since mid-December, the uncertainty that we have going into this budget. And we've also shared that the numbers would begin to solidify. And as the numbers solidify in February and March, we'll have a better understanding of where we are. And so the rising healthcare benefit cost surprised us. We knew it was rising. We were projecting 10%, and we were hit with an 18% increase in healthcare cost. That's significant. I call it 100,000. The healthcare rep said, well, it's really not 100, it's 98. To me and to Paul and to Gentry, if you're above 90, you call it 100. That's a $100,000 increase. We talked previously about the increase in the retirement plan contribution. That's for the defined benefit plan, up 2.5%. And workers' compensation, we don't have a solid number, but the best guess is a 13% increase year over year. And that's in the ballpark of what we had talked about. And we will have a balanced budget on April 5th. But it's just good to know that we're facing some hurdles that we weren't anticipating them being as high. It's a good thing that Mr. Jones, I think, is a runner and will be able to help us navigate these hurdles. On the plus side, we received notification actually today that highway user revenue for next year is actually projected to be up a little. And I thought that was a little strange. We were anticipating it falling some, but the projection we received today from MML was 202,000. So that's a slight bump. And then on budget, I also want to mention there's a lot of talk in different circles and in the news media about the American Rescue Plan. And so depending on which source that you're looking at, it says that money will go directly to municipalities. Units of local government is the term they use in the plan. And that it's projected that the town may receive $6 million towards having programs that are in direct response to the conditions caused by the pandemic. And then there's some other areas that we can spend the money as well, hazard pay, things of that nature. But I've read the relevant portions of the act. And my position on this right now is kind of wait and see. I have reached out to the contacts with the federal government and seeking clarity on how the rules are written in the act themselves. And so I'm anticipating an answer later this week. And once we have that answer back in terms of how the program will be administered to municipalities, and especially municipalities in an urban county under HUD regulations, and municipalities that have a participation agreement or cooperation agreement, cooperation agreement with an urban county. And we are one such municipality. And so I have raised the question, and folks are looking into it. I hope I'm wrong, but I still think in the long run that the town will receive an allocation. I just don't know if it's going to come directly to us or not. And so that we'll have to wait and see how that's interpreted. It's a huge document, and I'd encourage people to read it as you have time. Subtitle M is the subtitle that's directly related to units of local government and Section 603 for those who are so inclined. But as we move forward into the rest of this calendar year, some challenges ahead other than the things we're working on with the budget. And that's protecting us, all of us, our residents, our staff team, everyone, from COVID-19 as restrictions are lifted and threats remain. And that's kind of the dynamic we find ourselves in now. So it's one of those things where I think we all wish the pandemic never happened, but we certainly hope that it's over soon. And as the weather gets nicer and as restrictions are lifted, we have to make sure that both as a staff team and as a community, we keep in place the safety protocols, even if you're vaccinated, because there's a lot of open-ended questions, right? And you're not sure who you're interacting with. And so that's a challenge for us in understanding the science side of it. And I think being patient with ourselves and each other in navigating whatever the new normal may be. And then enhancing and making permanent the positive steps that we've taken to date. So you've heard tonight about changes, lots of automation changes. When COVID is in the rearview mirror, there's no need for us to say, whoops, now you have to come to town hall to file your permit application, right? There's so many positive things from an operational standpoint. Mr. Smith mentioned that actually sick leave was down, other than for COVID related purposes. Sick leave was down because we didn't have too many people out with the flu. So there's a lot of positive things that happened in our workplace, and probably in others as well, that we would look to have a permanence about them. And PPE, absolutely. The technology stuff, yeah. The fact that even if we have, when we get back to in-person meetings, if we could have a hybrid model and we could still have folks join an in-person meeting remotely, because it goes back to what one of the foundational things that we have, right? And that's resident participation. And so working to make those positive steps permanent. It's a challenge, but it's something that we believe we can do. And then aligning the town's work with community expectations within existing resources. And this one started off, actually, it was on a slide that Ms. Lewis had put together for department specific. But I was like, that applies to all of us. And we are a changing town, and expectations will continue to change and to increase. And how we respond to those expectations, how we meet or exceed those expectations, given the resources we have. And turning to technology will get us part of the way. Reimagining ourselves and our operations, that may be needed as well. But having clear and just open dialogue about community expectations with existing resources. While it's a challenge, I think it would be positive to have those discussions. And then finding new sources of funding for infrastructure and right-sizing operations. And I've been talking to the council since I've been here about the need to continue to explore funding sources. And we've done that. We've brought in a couple $100,000 in grants, and we need to expand that. And so in the future, I'll give you some a preliminary thing. It won't be in the fiscal 22 budget, but perhaps in the future, perhaps in the 23 budget, having someone who specializes in seeking out those funding sources. And we do that a little, but perhaps having someone dedicated more than another duty as assigned would benefit the town. And so that's something that we'll explore more in fiscal 2022, and that we will hope to fund in 2023. And then just in closing, ding, and Ryan, I too, and I think there's others on these calls, remember what Chief Morris talked about. You had a record and you had a little twisty knob, right, to advance the film. But at the end of the day, I think we all love town life, and that's why we're here. And so the invitation to come grow with us is still here. People are taking us up on that invitation. And I think we all have grown a lot. I'll speak for myself. I've grown a lot in the last 15 months. I'm proud of what we've done as a community. And as TRP, in terms of having a heartbeat, and the residents, the council, the staff, the businesses, our whole team, we are the heartbeat. And so if you're asking me whether or not the town is strong, yes, the town is strong. Do we have challenges? Absolutely. Do we have a lot of projects that we need to bring across the finish line? Yes. Do we have people in place that can make that happen? Yes, we do. And we will continue to make serious and steady progress. And with that, I'll end the presentation and ask the mayor and council or anyone if they have questions. Actually, Mr. Mayor, if you want to manage any questions.
I'd like to thank the entire team, first of all, for a fantastic presentation. And looking back over the last year, just from my perspective, I'm just astonished. I mean, we had layered crises, one on top of the other, as you detailed in your first slides, Mr. Town Manager. And we were ready to respond to each of them. We did respond to each of them, and we moved quickly, and we moved creatively, and we did things that other people, other municipalities, other towns didn't think to do. And you know, I'm still talking to other towns about our innovative farmers market program, and they're just amazed that we came up with that idea and that we were able to implement it in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks and get it out there and get food into people's hands. So the town has definitely been challenged. The town staff have, the town residents have been challenged, and we were challenged not just by the events, but by the fact that we had to build new tools to even address those events, because the traditional tools we had of meeting, of discussing, of networking were all disrupted by the pandemic. But we did manage to do it, and I think that we are going to come out of this situation better, and hopefully soon. So with that, are there any questions or comments from members of the public or members of the council for the town manager or staff?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
I want to say thank you to the town manager and staff. I know that I have echoed these sentiments throughout our meetings, but here's another opportunity to do so. There is no playbook on how to be a council member. You ask a lot of questions, you bounce things upstairs, and to be a part of this team and to work with this remarkable staff. Everyone who spoke here this evening, I feel incredibly confident in their abilities. I feel incredibly confident in ability to communicate with them. I have no problems doing that at all. And just to see your response to this pandemic has truly been remarkable. Kudos to you, Mr. Town Manager, and to the staff that you've put together and the staff that was here previously. I am tremendously proud of the work that you and collectively we have done. And I couldn't be more proud of the town that I live in and a lot of you work for. Thank you for being professional to the maximum. I couldn't speak more highly of all of you, and it's been my pleasure to work with you.
Thank you. I see a hand for Ms. McAllister, unless Ryan is hiding behind Karen's name.
Hey, thanks. No, it's Karen. Let me see if I can figure out how to lower hand. There we go. Cool. Thanks everyone for your presentations. Really informative. Just two quick questions. If the chief could talk about the narcotics bust, and then if Ryan could address the two properties on Queensberry that are being purchased, and maybe what the intent of the property acquisition is. Thanks.
So Karen, thank you for the question. The narcotics activity was occurring in a rental property in town. It was brought to our attention through residents confidentially. I don't want to give too many specifics, but they noticed an increase in traffic, and they also noticed an increase in pedestrian activity. So we were able to acquire some video surveillance of the particular address and identify individuals that were involved. What was particularly concerning was that there was weapons that were evident being possessed by the suspects in this case. So we were able to make some arrests away from the location of the target that we had in question, and gain some additional information and probable cause. And subsequently, we were able to obtain a search warrant for the location, executed that search warrant and shut down that operation, made several arrests on some individuals that had some lengthy criminal records, and they are out of the picture, out of the town, and that rental property is now no longer a rental property. Does that answer your question?
Of course, I would like more details, but you're probably not at liberty to say, like, what kind of drugs were they selling? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I can. It was marijuana in large quantities, and I recognize that marijuana is not given the same consideration as some other drugs, but when marijuana has a nexus to other violent crime, as in this case it did, because individuals that are engaged in this type of activity are going to protect the product, that raises the concern. So while it was marijuana, it was large quantities, and it was and again, we confiscated a number of weapons during the course of that investigation as well. But I really have to give credit to the our community members that took an active role in paying attention and then reaching out to the police department. And if you want to have a little more discussion where it's not in a public setting, there may be some other information we can talk about, but just don't feel comfortable doing it in this setting.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yes, and in regards to 5,000 and 5,000 to Queensberry, it is up to the mayor and council, the future use of these properties, but the staff recommendation will likely be for a partnership to address a dire parking need in the area, both for those visiting the town properties and also those visiting the Riverdale Elementary School.
So Ryan, those are the houses right next to the police department? I haven't looked them up, but okay. So those two single family homes. Okay. Those are the ones that have been purchased.
That's right.
And,
yes.
and maybe used for parking in the future.
Maybe, yes, but it is up to the mayor and council.
Okay, thanks.
And we plan to have a community involving decision process on that. So we'll be having meetings about it. The purchase of the properties was a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity. And so we did that, and we're deciding what to do with them afterwards. Are there additional public or council questions, comments for the town manager or staff?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
I think that Councilmember Dixon was a little bit ahead of you, Councilmember Lingua. So if she would like
Oh,
to go
please
first.
allow them to go ahead.
Councilmember Dixon.
I was just going to echo some of the comments made by Councilmember Foe and thanking the staff for a lot of hard work in the past year. I know that I've voiced my appreciation on in some of our meetings and have even voiced some frustration when I felt that the effort of the staff was not acknowledged. But I appreciate actually hearing from everyone individually and giving each person an opportunity to show how much their efforts have contributed to basically keeping our town afloat. Speaking for myself, I mean, I have a full-time job. It's been challenging to say the least, but my job doesn't directly affect the day-to-day lives of people, especially in the aspect of their lives that probably matter the most to them, and it's their living situation. So kudos and thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Thank you for your leadership, and to the staff, thank you again, because I know not only working full-time jobs, you guys have families and personal lives that you've also had to manage. So I hope that you all recognize that your efforts have not gone unnoticed on behalf of the council.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lingua.
If I was to use a word, I'm thinking back to that one slide with the various words that were up there. One word I would think of is undaunted, in how staff came at this and responded to what was put in front of them. Just the persistence and the steady determination moving forward to find ways to make things work. It's really just a tremendous effort on the part of staff. And it's something that I think all of us in the community can be very proud of in terms of the effort made over the past 12 months. So my hat's off to you. My congratulations to all the staff regarding how you and the entire staff really has been able to respond to what was put before you. Really just exemplary in many ways. That said, as the saying goes, when one incredible feat is pulled off, even if it is over a certain amount of time, and possibly maybe said in a way that may not be fair, but when you set such a high bar by your acts, people ask, so what will be for the encore? And there's really no answer to that right now. I think it's just a continued drive forward in terms of the things that you've identified during this time that have worked really well. Things also that may just need a minor adjustment or two to take care of. And at the same time, being able to, during all this, to identify things that really, as a town, needs to be looked at quite seriously for the long-term, I don't know which term you want to use, sustainability, viability, long-term well-being of the municipality. And in doing that, with the staff that are on hand currently, couldn't ask for a better crew to work through this all and to engage and embrace things going forward. And I think it's something that a lot of members in this community, I sure hope they are, do appreciate all that has been done and will be done in the future.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there additional questions or comments from anyone? Hearing none, thank you, Town Manager Lustician. Thank you, all members of leadership team, for your presentations, for the information, for a fantastic state of the town address. And let's keep it up. We're not out of this crisis yet, but let's keep moving forward. Let's keep moving upward. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very much.